Politics and media, as intertwined as they might be, are usually the root of most controversies. Often, people who put themselves at their juncture and manage to retain dominance end up at the top of the richest and the most powerful. In this video, we'll look at one such political figure, the Whitehouse's press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre. The appointment of Jean-Pierre as one of the White House's communications officials gains her a number of firsts. Jean-Pierre made history as the first Black, openly LGBTQ immigrant person to be appointed as press secretary, a role that's known for being one of the most scrutinizing public-facing jobs in government. Stick around to the end of the video to learn how she got into this tricky role and became one of the most popular and highly paid officials of the political class. Karine Jean-Pierre was the eldest born child in a family of 5 in Martinique, Haiti, an overseas territory of France. Her mother had been active in her Pentecostal church and worked as a home health aide while her father was a taxi driver who had an engineering degree. When Karine was 5, the Haitian Jean-Pierre family immigrated to a Haitian immigrant neighborhood in New York City, where Jean-Pierre grew up. Since her parents worked most days of the week, often living from paycheck to paycheck, it was Karine who took care of her younger siblings. In her 2019 book, Moving Forward, A Story of Hope, Hard Work, and the Promise of America, she recounted her youth in a Haitian immigrant community as having a significant influence on her life. Jean-Pierre elaborates in her memoir that the most career-altering moment of her life would be watching former Congresswoman Barbara Jordan deliver a keynote speech at the 1992 Democratic National Convention. Karine writes, "She was the first Black woman in politics I had ever witnessed in a world of pretty, pearl-wearing charmers. Jordan was substantive and authentic. Jean-Pierre's newfound ambition for politics, a little bit of luck and leverage, would lead her from her humble beginnings as a struggling family in New York City to becoming the first of multiple things, most of which are in connection to the White House." Before finding her interest in politics, Jean-Pierre began her higher education in medicine as per her parents' preferences and studied life sciences. She performed poorly on the admissions test for the medical college and thereafter switched up her career track, pursuing a Bachelor of Science degree at the New York Institute of Technology. She graduated in 1997 before attending the School of International and Public Affairs in the University of Columbia, where she served in the student government. This was what initiated her inclination towards politics. The French native started off her career with the New York City councilor James Gennaro, serving as the head of legislative and budget affairs. In 2006, Jean-Pierre became an outreach coordinator in Walmart Watch. Politics often requires that one retains recognition of having rubbed shoulders with political tycoons of any given time. Jean-Pierre became the regional political director for the campaign of John Edwards in 2004 and later on in 2008 for Barack Obama. During President Obama's first term, she worked herself up and became the political affairs director of the White House. Karine played an instrumental role in the re-election campaign of Obama in 2012. She went on to become a spokesperson for MoveOn.org while at the same time being part of Martin O'Malley's run for presidency. In her book Moving Forward, published in 2019, Jean-Pierre encourages people to engage in the political game. She became a political commentator for NBC and MSNBC in 2019 and subsequently leveraged her recognition for a successful campaign for Joe Biden in 2020. Jean-Pierre was recruited as a senior advisor and the principal deputy press secretary in the Biden-Harris transition team. Luck is often a part of success, and that's not to negate the unexplainable extents the political class treads to climb up the hierarchy of social status. When President Biden took office, the then press secretary Jen Psaki announced that she doesn't plan to stick around for the long haul. As per her claims, she stepped down as the press secretary for MSNBC, paving the way for Karine Jean-Pierre to take up her most significant position to date. It appears that Jean-Pierre had won the trust of many high-profile politicians over the years. President Biden said in a statement, quote, "Karine not only brings the experience, talent, and integrity needed for this difficult job, but she will continue to lead the way in communicating about the work of the Biden-Harris administration on behalf of the American people." But this trust was not built overnight. As Jean-Pierre herself notes in her memoir, she says that the first conversation she had with Biden was back in 2009, when both of them shared a flight seated next to each other on an Air Force Two flight from New Jersey. From then on, both of them ended up traveling together so often that she was given an official pin to grant access to the then vice president. Apart from her mostly successful roles in multiple election campaigns and her role in the White House's press, she has been a staunch supporter of the Democratic Party, making multiple recurrent appearances as a political analyst on MSNBC. In the initial part of her career, Jean-Pierre had to work multiple unconventional jobs, like, for example, volunteering as a firefighter during her college years. She has also been a phone canvasser for the Citizens Campaign for the Environment, which were all short-lived considering her significant political journey. How rich is Karine Jean-Pierre? Over the years, she has accumulated multiple sources of income, and sources online differ as to what her net worth could be. Reports online put her net worth somewhere between $1 and $2 million, and it seems to be that her primary sources of income are constituted by her annual salary as the White House Principal Deputy Secretary, U.S. congressional salary, royalties, and sales as an author, and her previous and occasionally filled role as an analyst for NBC and MSNBC. The 2021 Annual Report to Congress on White House Personnel records that Jean-Pierre made a salary of $150,000 per year as the Deputy Assistant to the President and Senior Advisor. However, after having become the Press Secretary, she is compensated with at least $180,000 a year, making her one of the most highly paid officials in the Biden administration. In 2014, she was employed briefly as a lecturer at the School of International and Public Affairs, where she taught campaign management. According to Glassdoor and Indeed, she could have made a salary of around $65,000 during her brief and lesser-known time there. In a New York Times article, Karine Jean-Pierre's rise to the White House lecterns was rightly described as unlikely, and that has been the very question for many. How could she have been transformed by her circumstances at such a steady rate from her humble beginnings in an immigrant community? How could she have worked up the status quo to become the figure of influence she is today? Of course, without a doubt, having a Black, LGBTQ, and immigrant woman hold this recognized role would account for a positive impression on the public concerning the ongoing heat about having minority communities represented in government. But how did Jean-Pierre rise up to become that lady? 47-year-old Jean-Pierre stepped into the role of press secretary for the Biden government earlier in 2022, in an especially difficult moment. At the time, the Biden government was struggling to win the general public's support to fit its agenda and get support for the midterm elections later on. From what's obvious, Jean-Pierre would have to deal with a variety of issues, from record-setting inflation rates to the resurgent pandemic, all of which the general public demands answers for. Not to mention following in the footsteps of the previous controversial White House Press Secretary, Jen Psaki. Her journey to political stardom, so to speak, is as mysterious as it is kept private. An interviewee for the New York Times describes Karine as an example of someone who rises to the occasion and grabs unimaginable power. The spokesperson herself calls her journey to the White House lecterns inconceivable for anyone in a family like hers. She adds to the peculiarity, revealing the fact that she considers herself an introvert, which begs the question of how she could have been appointed as the press secretary, a job role that requires a lot of interaction and organizing. Some suggest Karine's performance in a role has been controversial at times, while her qualifications questionable, as it appears her appointment to White House Press Secretary was merely to satisfy a progressive political agenda. Jean-Pierre's outlandish journey to political notoriety remains a secret for the most part, just like most things politics. The political class has access to information and power that common people never would. Drop your thoughts in the comments section below and let us know what you think could be hiding behind the facade of onstage appearances and social services of the political class.